The medbay of Outpost 47 was never supposed to smell like fear. It was meant to smell of sterile air, cool metal, and the faint hum of scanners running diagnostics on patients from a dozen alien worlds. But that day, even the walls seemed to tremble. The predator on the table was not supposed to be alive. It had been dragged in half dead from the battlefield, massive, scaled, and armored with nature's cruelty. Its breathing was ragged, its eyes glowing like molten glass. Every medic in. The room had backed away, their instruments clattering to the floor. Except one human. Dr. Elias Ward stood in front of the creature, calm as a frozen lake. His gloved hand hovered inches above its chest, reading the rhythm of its uneven heart. Behind him, the alien medic, a tall being with translucent blue skin and glassy eyes, whispered in disbelief. "It will kill you. It's not sedated enough." Elias didn't answer. He just looked at the creature, the so-called enemy, and saw not rage, but pain. The claws weren't reaching to attack. They were trembling. The alien medic, Dr. Rehatal, took a nervous step back. "You don't understand its kind. They're predators. They don't feel fear." Elias finally spoke, voice quiet but steady. "Everything feels fear when it's dying." He reached for the creature's side, ignoring the hiss from the monitors. The alien recoiled, heart pounding faster, its tail lashing weakly. The rest of the team froze. "Dr. Ward!" someone shouted. "Get away!" He didn't move. His voice was low, almost tender. "It's only afraid." The room went silent. Rehatal stared at him as if he'd spoken madness. Afraid? That thing devoured an entire squad. Elias looked over his shoulder, eyes calm. Maybe they shot first. For years, the Galactic Accord had painted humanity as reckless, dangerous, too emotional for interspecies medicine. But here, in the flickering lights of a blood-smeared medbay, Elias Ward looked less like a reckless man and more like a force of nature itself, still, patient, impossible to intimidate. He leaned closer to the predator, letting it smell the air between them. The creature's eyes flickered, muscles tensing, then slowly easing. It blinked once. "Good," Elias murmured. "That's it. You're safe." Rehatal swallowed hard. "How are you doing that?" "Listening," Elias said simply. "You're not listening. You're... something else?" Elias smiled faintly. "That's what you said the last time I fixed your patient, remember?" She wanted to argue, but her throat tightened. She had seen the human walk through horrors that broke soldiers in half. Somehow, he never raised his voice. He never panicked. Now, as the predator's pulse steadied under his touch, even she couldn't deny what she was seeing. The creature exhaled, slow and trembling. Elias nodded, his tone soft. "That's it. Easy now. You're not the enemy here." The team behind him exchanged confused glances. None of them had ever heard a human speak to a predator like that. Rehatal's hands trembled as she looked at the vitals. "The stress hormones are dropping." Elias smiled faintly. "Told you. Fear's worse than any wound." The next few minutes passed in uneasy quiet. The other medics began to move again, carefully following his instructions. Scanners reactivated. Instruments hummed. Rehatal stepped closer, her voice low. "You shouldn't have done that. If it had lashed out..." "It didn't," Elias said simply. "Because it recognized you?" she asked. "Because I didn't treat it like a monster." She looked at him for a long moment, studying the faint exhaustion behind his steady eyes. Humans, she thought, were strange creatures. Too fragile for war, too stubborn to break. And yet, here one was, saving the thing that had almost killed his kind. Hours later, the medbay lights dimmed as the predator slept under sedation. Rehatal approached Elias quietly. "You know the council will ask questions," she said. They'll say you endangered the team. Elias didn't look up from the chart. Then I'll tell them the truth. And what's that? He looked at her finally, expression calm. That compassion isn't a weakness. It's just rare. She blinked, unsure whether she was more afraid of the predator or of the human who spoke like that. Outside, the storm over Outpost 47 raged, wind howling against the metal walls. But inside, for the first time since the war began, something had shifted. A single act of calm in the face of fear had changed everything. The next morning, the med bay was silent, except for the steady hum of life support machines. The wounded predator, now sedated and stabilized, lay under a pale blue field of healing light. Its chest rose and fell slowly, like a storm easing after days of thunder. Dr. Elias Ward stood by the window, his reflection faint in the glass. The war outside had quieted, but inside the outpost, whispers were spreading faster than any wound could heal. 2 alien medics stood at the far corner, voices low. He touched it, one hissed. A human touched a carnivore from Vrax 9 with his bare hand. And lived, the other replied. Humans, the first muttered. They always pretend fear is optional. Elias heard them but didn't turn. His eyes were on the creature, the predator that had tried to kill everything it saw only hours ago. Now it slept like a child. Behind him, Dr. Rehatal entered quietly, her steps soft against the polished floor. You haven't left since last night, he smiled faintly. You make it sound like I'm obsessed. You are, she said. And maybe that's why you're still alive. She walked closer, studying the readings on the display. It's stabilizing. Faster than expected. That's what happens when something stops fighting for its life, Elias said. Rehatal tilted her head. You're implying it trusted you. I'm saying it stopped being alone. She sighed, folding her hands. You know the council will see this as reckless behavior. They don't like surprises, especially human ones. He gave a small laugh. They didn't like us breathing either, but here we are. Later that day, the investigation team arrived. 3 officials in sleek black uniforms entered the med bay, flanked by 2 armed guards. The lead investigator, a rigid insectoid named Velcor, spoke without preamble. Dr. Ward, you violated containment protocols. You endangered staff. Explain yourself. Elias stood straighter but didn't raise his voice. It wasn't aggression. It was panic. You can't treat fear with violence? Velcor's mandibles clicked sharply. Fear? That thing killed 30 soldiers, Rehatal interrupted. They fired first. The creature's bioscans showed defensive responses only. Velcor turned to her. Doctor, you are not authorized to analyze motives. Stick to biology. She froze. Elias stepped closer. Then maybe you should try it. Biology's a better teacher than war. The guards shifted uneasily. Velcor's eyes narrowed. You're dangerously sentimental, human. I'm alive because of it, Elias said. The investigator's tone turned cold. You are confined to the outpost until the council reviews this incident. Elias didn't flinch. Fine, but someone needs to stay with the creature. Velcor gave a low, chittering sound of disdain. You want to nurse your enemy? Elias looked back at the creature. No, I want to understand it. The alien stared at him for a long time before turning away. Humans, he muttered, and left. That evening, the outpost dimmed into its night cycle. Rehatal found Elias still at the med bay, sitting beside the creature's pod. You could have argued less, she said quietly. Wouldn't have changed anything, he replied. They don't fear the predator. They fear the idea that we might not have to fight. She looked at him curiously. You speak as if peace is a disease you're trying to cure. Maybe it is, Elias said, leaning back in his chair. Something everyone wants until they have to live with it. The alien medic studied him in silence. Humans were strange, reckless, irrational, and yet something about them drew out the truth in everyone else. Rehatal turned toward the containment field. The creature stirred, its claws twitching slightly. The sensors blinked. It's dreaming, Elias said softly. How do you know? He smiled faintly. Because I've seen that look before. Soldiers get it after the war ends and they realize they don't know how to rest. Rehatal looked at him for a long moment. You're a doctor, not a philosopher. Same thing, he said. Hours passed. The outpost slept. Somewhere distant, thunder rolled, a storm crawling across the alien horizon. Inside the medbay, the hum of the machines grew rhythmic, almost like breathing. The creature's eyelids flickered. Its eyes opened slightly, glowing gold under the dim light. Elias didn't move. Easy, he whispered. You're safe. The creature's gaze focused on him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, it lowered its head back onto the table, as if accepting that the human's voice was truth enough. Rehatal exhaled quietly. I think it knows you. Maybe, Elias said. Or maybe it just recognizes kindness when it sees it. She watched him for a long time. You really think it's capable of that? He smiled without looking away. Everything that breathes is. Outside the medbay window, lightning flashed across the alien sky, lighting up the outpost in silver. The war might not have ended, but something more important had begun. A fragile understanding born not from weapons or treaties, but from a whisper. It's only afraid. Inside, the predator slept. The human watched, and the alien medic, who once believed predators knew no fear, found herself wondering if maybe humans were the strangest creatures of all, because they were the only ones who looked at monsters and saw pain instead of power. By the third day, the medbay felt more like a cage than a hospital. Guards had been stationed outside, the door sealed with coded locks that hissed when anyone came near. The lights inside stayed low, soft blue shadows falling across the predator's still body. Dr. Elias Ward sat beside it again, the hum of the machines his only company. He wasn't supposed to be here after the investigation, but the alien guards never stopped him. Maybe they knew he'd ignore them anyway. He leaned forward, studying the creature's pulse. It was slow, calm, almost peaceful. He exhaled. You're doing better than I am, friend. Behind him, the medbay door opened with a hiss. Dr. Rehatal stepped in, her long cloak rustling softly. She carried a tablet full of data, her expression unreadable. You didn't attend the council briefing, she said. Didn't feel like watching politics pretending to be medicine, Elias replied. Her glassy eyes flicked toward him. They're calling it a containment failure. They think you altered the sedation protocols on purpose, he smiled faintly. They always think that when something doesn't fit in their reports. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Elias, they want to move it off-world, to a research facility. You know what that means. His jaw tightened. Dissection in the name of science. Analysis, she corrected softly. Then, almost whispering. But yes. He stood up, running a hand through his hair. Reha, this thing trusted me. It's not a weapon. It's a living being trying to survive. That's exactly what the council fears, she said quietly. Hours later, the council session began. Elias stood in a circular chamber lined with glowing pillars and alien representatives seated in elevated platforms. The air was heavy with judgment. Councillor Velcor's insectoid form shifted as he spoke. Dr. Ward, humanity's emotional instability continues to disrupt medical order. You formed a bond with an apex predator. Do you deny it? Elias crossed his arms. I don't deny compassion. A ripple of low murmurs spread across the chamber. Another councillor, a crystalline being with a voice like breaking glass, said coldly, Your kind continues to mistake mercy for control. That creature you pity has destroyed colonies. Elias looked up at them. So did you once. Every species did, until you learned what fear costs. Why shouldn't it learn the same? Velcor leaned forward. You speak as if beasts deserve forgiveness. No, Elias said quietly. I'm saying they deserve a chance. Silence fell. Then the crystalline councillor slammed a hand on the table. Enough! You are forbidden from interacting with the specimen further. Guards will transfer it at dawn. Elias felt the words like a knife. You'll kill it! That is not your concern, Velcor hissed. You are dismissed. Elias stood still for a moment longer, his jaw tight, then turned and walked out. Rehatal found him hours later, standing in the corridor overlooking the alien sunrise. The clouds glowed green and silver, light rippling over the barren landscape. "They'll move it tomorrow," she said softly. "I know." "You can't stop them." Elias turned toward her, eyes dark. "Then help me do something they can't predict," she frowned. "You mean break the law? I mean save a life." Rehatal stared at him for a long moment. "You humans and your impossible optimism." "It's the only thing that's ever changed anything," he said. That night they moved quietly. The medbay lights flickered as Rehatal disabled the surveillance drones. Elias worked at the restraints, careful not to trigger alarms. The predator stirred slightly, sensing movement. Its golden eyes blinked open, confusion flashing across its gaze. "Easy," Elias whispered. "We're leaving." The creature tilted its head, nostrils flaring as if it understood. The final lock released with a hiss. The beast rose slowly, its massive body casting shadows across the room. For a moment, Elias thought it might bolt, but instead, it stood still, looking down at him. Rehatal swallowed. "If it turns violent, it won't," Elias said. Outside, alarms began to echo faintly. "The system had noticed. Go!" Rehatal hissed. "The transport bay!" They ran through the corridors, metal walls flashing red, sirens growing louder. The creature bounded beside them, moving with silent power, keeping pace but never striking out. A squad of guards appeared at the far end of the hall, weapons drawn. Elias stopped. "Don't shoot!" he shouted. "It's not attacking!" The guards hesitated, but their orders came through their comms cold and clear. "Terminate on sight." The first bolt fired. The creature roared, not in anger, but fear. It crouched, trembling. Elias stood in front of it. "Don't, please!" Rehatal shouted. "Elias, move!" He didn't. He raised his hands. "It's only afraid." Something in his voice, steady, defiant, almost pleading, made the guards falter. For a heartbeat, no one fired, and in that heartbeat, the beast lowered its head beside him, pressing close, its breathing slowing. Rehatal stared, stunned. "It trusts you." Elias looked back at her. "Then we can't let them take it." The alarm blared louder, lights flashing crimson. The outpost was waking up. Rehatal exhaled shakily. "You're out of your mind." Elias smiled faintly. "I'm human. It's kind of our thing." The outpost trembled as the alarms rose to a scream. Red lights strobed across the steel corridors, and the mechanical voice of the station AI repeated the same phrase over and over. "Containment breach detected." Security lockdown in effect. Dr. Elias Ward didn't slow down. His boots hammered against the floor as he ran through the narrow service tunnels, the alien medic Rehatal close behind. Between them moved the wounded predator, massive, breathing hard, eyes glowing faint gold under the flashing lights. "This way!" Rehatal shouted over the noise. They darted through a maintenance hatch into a dark passage lined with exposed conduits. Sparks flickered overhead as the outpost system shifted into combat mode. Elias turned back to check the creature. It limped slightly, still recovering from its injuries, but it followed without hesitation. "We're almost there," he told it, as if it understood. "Elias," Rehatal hissed, "the transport bay's ahead, but so are the guards." "Then we don't go through them," he said. "We go under," she stared. "Under?" He pointed to the grated floor. "Ventilation crawl space. Leads straight to the hangar." Rehatal blinked her translucent eyes. That shaft wasn't built for humans, let alone that thing. "Neither was this war," Elias muttered. Prying the grate open, they crawled through the shaft, the sound of distant gunfire echoing through the metal. Rehatal kept glancing back at the predator, who moved silently behind them despite its size, body folding impossibly to fit the narrow tunnel. The air was hot, thick with the scent of machine oil. Rehatal's voice was barely a whisper. "Do you even know where this leads?" "Somewhere that isn't here," Elias said. "That's not a plan. It's a start," she exhaled sharply. "Humans, you improvise like you were born falling out of orbit." Maybe we were, Elias replied with a tired grin. The tunnel ended abruptly at a vertical shaft. Faint light filtered up from below, the hangar deck. Elias peered down. It's about 15 meters. I can drop. You and the big one. Well, you'll have to trust gravity. Rehatal's frills twitched in disbelief. That's not science. It's physics with bad timing. Before she could reply, he jumped. He landed hard but steady, rolling to absorb the shock. The hangar was half-lit, full of half-repaired ships and flickering consoles. Above, the red glow of alarms made the air look like liquid fire. "Come on!" he called. Rehatal dropped next, nearly collapsing on impact. The Predator followed with a heavy thud that shook the deck plates. It stood tall, scanning the hangar with wide, alert eyes. Elias moved quickly toward a small transport shuttle, an older model, maybe slow but sturdy. He keyed the hatch open with a stolen ID card. "In!" Rehatal scrambled inside, her hands flying across the console. "You know how to fly this thing?" "Only if we're lucky." The Predator hesitated at the ramp, growling low at the unfamiliar machine. Elias extended a hand. "It's all right." "Come on." After a heartbeat, it stepped forward, ducking into the hold. The hatch sealed shut. Outside, shouts erupted. The hangar doors opened, and a squad of guards flooded in, weapons raised. "Stop that shuttle!" Rehatal looked up, panic flickering in her crystalline eyes. "Elias, I see them." He slammed the ignition switch. The engines coughed once, then roared to life. The whole ship shuddered. Blaster fire struck the hull, sending flashes of white light across the cockpit. Rehatal gripped the control panel. "They'll shoot us down before we lift." "Not if we give them something scarier to aim at," Elias said. He reached into his pocket and tossed a small metal sphere toward the open hangar doors, a field disruptor. The device detonated in a burst of electromagnetic energy. Lights flickered out, alarms cut off mid-scream, and the guards' weapons died in their hands. "Now!" he shouted. The shuttle blasted upward, engines screaming as it punched through the flickering barrier field. For a moment, the entire hangar glowed with white fire, and then they were in the open sky. Silence. Only the low hum of the ship's engines and the steady breath of those inside. Elias slumped back in his chair, sweat dripping down his neck. "We're clear." Rehatal stared at him in disbelief. "You just crippled a military outpost." He gave a faint, exhausted smile. "Good thing I'm not military." The Predator, lying near the back of the hold, gave a soft growl, almost a purr. Rehatal turned toward it. "You risked everything for that creature. Why?" Elias looked out the viewport at the distant stars. "Because someone has to remind the galaxy what mercy looks like." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "And what happens when mercy meets fear again?" Elias met her gaze. "Then I'll whisper again. It's only afraid." Hours later, the ship drifted through the edge of space, hidden in the shadow of a dying moon. The outpost below had fallen silent. Elias sat beside the creature, checking its vitals. The light from the console reflected in its golden eyes. Rehatal watched from the doorway. "You've made yourself an enemy of the Council," he nodded. "Then I guess I'll have to find some new friends." She tilted her head. "Humans," she said softly, almost with admiration. "You build peace out of chaos." "Someone has to," he said. The creature stirred, resting its head beside his leg. Its breathing was steady now, calm. Rehatal watched them both, Predator and human, sitting side by side, and felt something shift inside her chest. Something she hadn't felt since the war began. Hope. 3 weeks had passed since the escape. The stars no longer felt safe. Every message beacon carried encrypted Council warnings. Fugitive human doctor and stolen specimen. Approach with caution. Terminate if threatened. Dr. Elias Ward ignored them all. The small shuttle drifted through deep space, hidden in the dust ring of an uncharted moon. The engines were silent except for a faint hum, a mechanical heartbeat in the void. He stood near the med bay of the ship, watching the creature sleep. The Predator's breathing had steadied. Its wounds had closed into faint silver scars. Sometimes, when it dreamed, its claws twitched as if it were running. Rehatal entered quietly, her skin glowing faintly in the dim blue light. She held a data pad full of reports. "You should rest," she said. "I'll rest when it does," Elias replied, not looking up. She frowned. "You say that every night." "And every night, it gets a little stronger." Rehatal moved closer, glancing at the readings. "It's not just recovering, Elias. Its brain activity has changed. Look, these patterns here, emotional responses, learning curves." He smiled faintly. "It's adapting." "Adapting," she repeated softly. "To you." Elias finally turned to her. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "It's not bad," she said. "It's impossible." The next morning, a faint transmission signal reached the ship, static, garbled, faintly human. "Ward, this is Corin Station. Unidentified vessels searching nearby. Repeat, Council patrols inbound." Elias shut the signal off immediately. "They're close." Rehatal's frills flared. "We can't fight them. Our ship barely flies." "I know." He looked toward the sleeping creature. "But we can hide. On this moon, there's nothing here." He looked out the viewport at the jagged surface below. Exactly. They landed in a crater filled with silver mist. The ground shimmered faintly with minerals that reflected the light like shattered glass. Elias stepped out first, the dry air biting his lungs. Rehatal followed, adjusting her visor. "Beautiful," she whispered. "And dead." "Dead means quiet," Elias said. "Quiet means safe." The predator stepped down behind them, its claws sinking into the powdery dust. It lifted its head, sniffing the air, then gave a low sound, a growl or maybe something gentler. "It's sensing something," Rehatal said. Elias nodded. "It doesn't like this place, neither do I." They found an old mining station buried under rock, abandoned decades ago. Its walls were rusted and half buried in dust, but the power cells still hummed faintly when Elias reactivated them. They made camp inside, sealing the doors and lighting a small heater. Rehatal stared at him across the dim light. "You know the Council will track the ship's trail eventually." "I'm counting on it." She blinked. "You're what?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes running isn't enough. Sometimes you have to let them find you and show them what they're wrong about." Rehatal sighed. "Humans are addicted to trouble." "Maybe," Elias said, "but we're very good at surviving it." Days passed. They lived in uneasy peace. The creature, Rehatal began calling it Soren after an old Terran word for storm, grew calmer, more alert. It followed Elias everywhere, its golden eyes filled with curiosity instead of fear. One night, while Elias worked on the damaged communication terminal, Soren padded up behind him and sat beside his chair, silent and still. "You're getting too smart for your own good," he murmured. The creature's eyes glowed softly in the flickering light. Rehatal approached quietly. "It follows your voice. When you speak, its heart rate lowers." Elias chuckled. "I must have a soothing tone." "Or it remembers what you said in the med bay," she said. "It's only afraid." Maybe that stayed. He leaned back in his chair. "Then maybe fear doesn't have to last forever." That peace didn't last. The next morning, the sky above the moon flashed white. A signal burst through the atmosphere. Short-range scanners. Rehatal's eyes widened. "Council ships! They've found us!" Elias moved instantly. "Pack everything. Get Soren inside the shelter." The ground rumbled. From the ridge above, 3 sleek patrol craft descended, their engines burning blue trails through the mist. "They're coming in hot," Rehatal warned. Elias looked at Soren. "Stay calm. Remember what I told you." The predator's eyes narrowed, muscles tensing, but it didn't roar. It stood beside him, silent. The first shuttle landed. Soldiers poured out, weapons raised. A commanding voice rang through the speakers. "Dr. Ward, surrender the specimen immediately. You are charged with treason against the council." Elias stepped forward. "It's not a specimen. It's a life." "Then you can die with it," the voice replied coldly. Soren growled softly, low and protective. Rehatal grabbed Elias's arm. "They'll kill us!" He looked at her. "Not if they understand." He took a slow breath, then walked toward the soldiers, hands raised. The predator stayed behind him, pacing carefully. The soldiers aimed their weapons, but hesitated. The human wasn't afraid. The creature wasn't attacking. The commander stepped forward. "Last warning, Doctor." Elias met his gaze. "You're making the same mistake we always make. You see fear and call it danger. You see pain and call it a weapon." Soren made a small sound, something almost human, a low whimper of recognition. The soldiers froze. Rehatal's voice trembled. "Elias," he smiled faintly, "it's learning empathy, and if a predator can learn that, what's our excuse?" For a long moment, no one moved. The soldiers stood uncertain, their fingers tightening on triggers. Then the commander gave a sharp gesture. "Stand down!" The weapons lowered. Rehatal exhaled shakily. Soren leaned close to Elias, pressing its massive head against his shoulder. Elias closed his eyes. "Good," he whispered. "That's it. You're safe." The wind howled through the broken mining station, carrying away the echoes of violence that never happened. Above, the patrol ships hovered, waiting for orders. None came. The air was thin inside the abandoned mining station. The dust shimmered in the silver light breaking through the cracks in the roof. Outside, the council's patrol ships hovered like silent vultures, waiting for orders. The soldiers stood tense in the pale mist, their weapons lowered but not forgotten. Dr. Elias Ward didn't move. He stood in front of Soren, the once feared predator, his palms open, his face calm. Behind him, Rehatal's hands trembled as she tried to repair the damaged comm relay. "Every second felt longer than the last. Elias," she whispered, "they're not leaving. They're waiting for confirmation from the council." He nodded slowly. "Then we give them something worth confirming." The soldiers shifted uneasily. None of them wanted to be the first to act. The predator before them wasn't snarling, wasn't raging. It was watching. And in its golden eyes, they saw something no one expected. Understanding. The lead officer, Commander Varen, stepped forward, his armor gleaming. "You're forcing me to make a decision, Doctor," he said. "Hand it over peacefully, or I'll do what I'm ordered to do." Elias's voice was soft. "And when you do, Commander, what story will you tell yourself? That you destroyed a monster? Or that you killed proof the galaxy can change?" The question hung in the cold air. Behind Elias, Soren made a low sound, not a growl, but something mournful. It stepped closer, pressing its head gently against his shoulder. The gesture was almost human. The soldiers lowered their weapons another inch. Rehatal's voice was quiet but sharp. "They're scanning us, Elias. The council's watching through their helmets." He smiled faintly. "Good. Then let them see." Inside the council chamber light years away, the High Command watched the live transmission. Dozens of alien representatives leaned forward in silence. "This is your human hero," hissed Counselor Velcor, mandibles twitching, defying law, embracing chaos. But another voice, cold and metallic, answered, "No, look closer." On the screen, Elias crouched beside the predator, speaking softly. His hand rested against its shoulder. The creature's eyes fluttered, and it leaned into the touch, calm and steady. "He's not controlling it," someone murmured. "He's connecting to it." Velcor's claws scraped the desk. "You call that science?" "I call it evolution," said another. The council chamber erupted in whispers. Back on the moon, the standoff stretched like glass about to shatter. The comms crackled suddenly with Velcor's voice. "Dr. Ward," he hissed, his tone full of venom. "Stand down. You and your experiment will be terminated immediately." Elias touched his earpiece. "You can't kill an idea, Counselor." "And that's what this is now." "Then you'll die for it." Rehatal glanced up from the relay. "Elias, energy spike incoming!" The air outside shimmered. A low hum built into a roar. Above the clouds, a massive orbital cannon charged, glowing like a dying star. Soren's eyes widened. The ground began to tremble. "They're going to erase the whole site," Rehatal whispered. "To bury the evidence." Elias looked around, the soldiers, the creature, the sky. Then something in him clicked. "Not if we show them what evidence looks like." He turned to Soren. "Listen to me. They think you're dangerous. But you're not, are you? You're just scared." The creature's chest rose and fell, a slow rhythm. "Then show them," Elias said softly. "Show them what you are." The creature stepped past him, toward the soldiers, toward the light. It lowered its head, spreading its claws, then folded them beneath itself in a gesture so simple and pure it silenced the entire field. It bowed. Every soldier froze. Even the commander took a step back. In orbit, the cannon's glow flickered. Rehatal whispered, voice trembling, "They're seeing it, Elias. The entire council is watching." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe they'll remember this before they pull the trigger." Minutes passed. The cannon never fired. Instead, a second transmission came through, low and uncertain. "This is Council Command. Cease engagement." "Repeat, stand down." The soldiers lowered their weapons fully. The sky above dimmed as the cannon's light faded away. Elias exhaled. The tension that had wrapped around his chest finally broke. He turned to Rehatal, who was staring at the sky in disbelief. You changed their minds," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, it did." He looked back at Soren, who was still kneeling, golden eyes blinking softly. "All I did was listen." Hours later, the soldiers departed under quiet orders. No one spoke. No one dared to. Elias sat outside the mining station, staring at the stars. The war, the running, the fear, it all seemed far away now. Rehatal sat beside him, silent. Finally, she said, "The council won't admit what happened here." "They don't need to," Elias said. "The story will spread anyway. Someone will tell it. Someone will believe it." She looked at him. "You risked everything for one creature." He smiled. "No, I risked everything for the moment it stopped being one." Soren emerged from the shadows, settling beside them, its scales reflecting the light of the twin moons. Rehatal reached out hesitantly, touching its side. The creature didn't flinch. "It's warm," she whispered. Elias nodded. That's what life feels like when it isn't afraid anymore. The three of them sat in silence as the dawn crept across the silver horizon. A human, an alien, and a creature once called a monster. No peace treaty was signed that day. No flag was raised. But in that quiet place, peace existed just long enough to prove it was possible. And across the galaxy, those who had watched began to ask a dangerous question. If a predator could learn compassion, what excuse did the rest of them have?